Hey everyone, I'm going on holiday in a couple of days. I'm going back home for a visit in Toronto, Canada, and I wanted to shoot a quick video today about books, what books to read on holiday, and sort of tips and tricks, and what I'm taking with me to Canada on this trip, and what books I've taken with me on other trips in the last year or so. This year, I'm gonna bring books that I already showed you in my book haul, so I'm not gonna bring them out now, and that's The Hunger Games, Philip Pullman, and The Maze Runner. I'm going for 2.5 weeks, and it's not like I need to go see the sights of where I grew up, so I think I'll have plenty of time to read. I'm sure I'll hang out with my friends, but I'm gonna make time to just sit around and read and have my parents make food for me, and it's gonna be glorious. My thing with going on holiday, and this is pretty obvious, but I do see people make the mistakes, and I've made the mistake before too, is picking books that are too hard or challenging or old or classics. Not that I have problems with any books like that, but when you're going on holiday, you want something light and fun, something to really just get lost in, especially if you're on a plane, and just something that's really easy to get into, especially if you're going to be doing a lot of running around and you want to get through a few pages in your downtime. So I was really successful last year when I went and visited home. I brought with me Game of Thrones by George R. R. Martin, and it was so delightful. I had seen the show, but the book offers so much more, and it's such a page turner, and it's so you really get lost in it. And it was the perfect thing to bring. I was back home. It was October. It was autumn, and it was just so nice to be in my old childhood room reading a fantasy novel, and it was just perfect. But I did something a little bit different. A few months later, I met up with my parents in Paris, and I went for a little bit of a different thing. Rather than just doing a thriller or a really good page turning book, I decided when I went to Paris that I was going to do some Paris books. And ultimately, I think that led me to make a few mistakes. So I went with a couple of interesting choices. I went with Monsieur Pain, that's my poor attempt at French, by Roberto Bolaño, a great Chilean writer. And yeah, so I went with this, and then I went with Patrick Modiano's The Search Warrant, which won the Nobel Prize that year. So that was last year. And then I also brought with me George Simenon, the Two Penny Bar, which was originally published as The Bar on the Seine. And so here's what happened. I brought this one with me, and this is the one I read on the train. And this is a little trick, especially about Roberto Bolaño. He died a couple of years ago, and the publishers just keep pulling out manuscripts, drafts that he just sort of you can tell that he didn't want to get published or weren't finished, and they're just publishing it because he wrote a couple of really great novels, and this to me is one of his lesser works that's sort of a bit of a cash grab. It's really nicely designed. Like, if you feel it in your hand, it feels really cool. It's got a cool little thing. I don't know if you can see my eye. But yeah, ultimately, there were technical things in his writing that I found interesting, but ultimately, it was a bit of a dud. I had a headache. I had been working actually. I was on the Eurostar on the last train to Paris, and I had just finished 5 days in a row of working at the bookshop, manic Christmas retail madness, and this just wasn't the right book for being on the train. And there's some kid behind me asking for chocolate from his parents, and he just didn't stop the whole ride, going, "Mommy, where is the chocolate?" And my head just hurts, and this did not put me at ease. Next was Patrick Modiano's The Search Warrant. I have fond memories looking back on it. It was a really interesting read, but it's not really your typical novel with characters or dialogue or scenes. It's mostly about a guy walking around Paris and reflecting about Paris, and looking through, thinking about time. And so he'll walk down a street and think about how this other person walked down the street. And it's all fascinating, but ultimately, again, I don't think it was the right time to be reading it. And so what ended up being my favorite one was the George Simenon, with, I know, the very sort of garish cover of a woman, backside of a woman, but it was really fun. It goes by quickly. There's really fun characters, some fun dialogue. You're in Paris, and then you're out in the countryside, and it's really nice. It was really easy and simple, and I read it in like a day. It was great. I mean, I will say that for the two other books, that so it wasn't a complete failure because I picked short books. So even though they were tough, they went by. I at least finished them quickly. So that was an interesting choice. I have to say, it wasn't my first time in Paris, and the first time I went to Paris, I read A Movable Feast by Ernest Hemingway, and that was one of the best times of my life, just going between cafes and reading about Hemingway doing the same thing, and it was really a wonderful experience. So those are just a few thoughts I had on reading classics while on vacation, and yeah, maybe you took something away from it. Anyway, if you have a favorite book that you read at a certain time and place while you were traveling or going on holiday, or you want to tell me where you're going on holiday and what books you're bringing, please comment below. Yeah, cheers.